7 years now after a state trooper shot and killed a man in Brunswick County, we have new details about what really happened.
Highway Patrol Trooper Scott Collins never faced charges for shooting Brandon Webster in January of 2019. WECT's Connor Smith has those new details for us tonight. Some new reporting reveals state officials covered up the truth about this shooting.
Welcome to the Chicago Justice Podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Siska. I'm also Executive Director of the Chicago Justice Project and Adjunct Professor in the Department of Justice, Law, Criminology, and Security at American University. In this episode, we are discussing the murder of Brandon Webster on New Year's Day in 2019 by North Carolina Highway Patrol. Where in the country are we? Charlotte, North Carolina. Why are we discussing a 2019 murder? Because great reporting by our guest today, Joseph Neff. Neff is a staff writer for the Marshall Project who covers violence, neglect in prisons, prosecutorial and police misconduct, and other wrongdoing in the criminal justice system. Neff uncovered what can only be called a massive cover-up of the findings of an internal investigation of a shooting with multiple levels of the criminal justice system in North Carolina. Spoiler alert, internal investigators knew the officer's statement about the circumstances of the shooting were not truthful from the beginning. They did nothing. The family sued and won $2 million in 2023. There have been no repercussions to anyone involved in the shooting or the cover-up. To help us make sense of it all, we sit down with Neff to discuss his reporting on the case. I'll be back with you after the interview.
Trooper Collins pulls in behind them with his blue lights flashing. He had been parked by a stoplight, and when Brandon Webster, he stopped at the red light, and when the green light turned, he took a left turn and drove into the Mini Mart's parking lot. Webster said that Trooper Collins said that Webster had spun his wheels out and kind of fishtailed as he turned. And he said that was a misdemeanor offense of careless and reckless driving. Anyway, the trooper pulls in behind Webster. Webster's parking, and Webster starts backing up his truck because he is scared, his girlfriend said, and he wants to leave. The Trooper Collins, backs up his car and blocks Webster's way out of the parking lot. And the trooper gets out of the car, goes around behind his trooper vehicle with his gun drawn. First of all, this is a misdemeanor stop. It's not a felony stop. You don't pull your service weapon in misdemeanor or traffic stops. And he walks right in front of Brandon Webster's truck, which is a crazy thing for a cop to do. You should not be in front of a moving vehicle. Webster is shouting, the trooper is shouting, and Webster is clearly not trying to run the trooper over. In fact, he at several points stops because the trooper is in front of him. And finally, the trooper is on the side of Brandon Webster's pickup truck, and Webster drives away. And as his pickup truck pulls out of the parking lot, Collins fires twice. And one of the bullets hits Webster, and he drives home, quarter mile to his house. His parents see the car flying in. They're next door with grandma. They run out and they take him. He's bleeding all over the place. They take him to the hospital, and he literally takes his last breath in his mother's arms as he's bleeding all over her as they pull into the ER.
Okay, so the trooper's version quickly becomes the official one. Was there?
Correct.
And it's pretty well adopted through the local media. Was there anyone locally, besides the family, was there anyone locally that ever in the immediate aftermath questioned the shooting besides his parents and his girlfriend? Or did everyone just like go on with life?
No, the next morning, you're right. The local paper ran a story with the headline, "Shallotte Man." That's the town that they're in, Shallotte, North Carolina. Shallotte man dies after trying to ram trooper in traffic stop. So that was the operative verb, ram. He was trying to run over a trooper. And the local TV stations, they just take the press release from the highway patrol and they run with that story. However, the family doesn't believe it. His girlfriend doesn't believe it, and neither do mainly the Black community of Charlotte, North Carolina. There was a protest march. They about a week, maybe 10 days later, in a park across from City Hall. They got a permit for it. There's a couple, 150 people there, pretty big for a small town. And you got to remember, this is before George Floyd. It's not. It's not that type of issue yet. And then there were some other rallies, and eventually the family filed a lawsuit. But the narrative in the media and the official narrative remain the same. And after there were 2 investigations ensued. One was an internal affairs investigation done by the Highway Patrol itself. Did Trooper Collins violate any state highway patrol policy? And the other investigation was by the State Bureau of Investigation, the North Carolina SBI. And this was a criminal investigation. And they concluded that the trooper was in fear for his life because the truck was accelerating at him. And so therefore, under the Supreme Court precedent, did the trooper feel at the time that his life or someone else's life was in danger? And they said, well, the truck was accelerating at him, so they cleared him. No charges, no criminal charges were filed. And the Highway Patrol's internal investigation, the results of which were not made public, they said that he violated no policies.
So A.G. Stein, who's now your governor, a Democrat, he's Attorney General at the time, and he come out and says that Collins, the trooper Collins, had a reasonable belief that he was going to be run down. Where did A.G. Stein get that information? He got it from the state investigation and from the internal investigation by the Highway Patrol.
I do not believe that he had the Highway Patrol's internal investigation. Was a personal matter. He may have. I don't know. It may have been shared with the State Bureau of Investigation. Stein relied on his chief criminal, number one, the head of the whole criminal division at the Department of Justice. And she reviewed the SBI investigation and came up with her conclusion was that the truck was accelerating at the trooper. And she is now the Secretary of Correction for North Carolina. So they both moved up in the world.
They did. Even though, before I get ranting on that, what did the internal investigation, and I'm not sure if it differed with the state, but what did the internal investigation within the Highway Patrol actually determine? Not what did they say they determined. What did investigators actually uncover and make decisions about the shooting?
Okay, so the SBI requested that the Highway Patrol perform an accident reconstruction. This is routine. Troopers do it in many, especially car accidents. How fast was the car going? When did it leave the road? Who hit who when? So they have a lot of experience in this. And the criminal investigation asked the highway patrol to reconstruct the accident. Now, there's a little bit of a conflict here that the highway patrol is investigating their own, but they went ahead and they did this investigation. And it was pretty simple. I mean, it boils down to pretty simple. Where did the bullets come from? So the bullets were not in the front of the truck. They were not in the engine block. They were not in the front, in the windshield. They came through the driver's side door, which calls into question this assertion that Webster was trying to run him over. And what they do is they take long wooden dowels and they put them into the bullet holes and use that as a way to figure out where was the shooter standing. One bullet lodged itself inside the door. The second one pierced the plastic strip at the bottom of the window and shattered the window and went into Brandon Webster's left shoulder, and then across through his body, punctured a lung, severed his esophagus. I mean, that bullet was going through his left shoulder to the right side of the body. And it showed that the trooper, when he shot, was standing alongside the driver's door. He was in no danger of being run down.
Oopsies. Which, by the way, every officer on the scene that saw the car knew instantly, as any average American or average person would, that the trooper did not fire from the front of the car, as I'm sure he immediately told people on the scene happened. Anyone could see that car and look and say, wow, those bullets did not come from the front. They came from the side.
Yeah, they should have known it that night. They wouldn't have, on the scene, they had to, the truck was down the road at mom and dad's house. And they did go down there later. Yeah, it's pretty easy. I went and saw the bullet hole. It's still there. They replaced the window, but there it is right there in the weather stripping, where the bullet went into the door.
Okay, so under oath, in the civil lawsuit, did the family depose investigators from the highway patrol? Or was it the state agency that they got to talk about whether or not the officer Collins had violated rules?
They interviewed 6 people from the highway patrol, including Trooper Collins himself, the trooper who was the first to arrive on the scene afterwards. They deposed Collins's boss, and most importantly, they interviewed the chief internal investigator who did the whole investigation. And that was really interesting to read. It's on paper. I can't hear his voice. I don't see the investigator's face, but the trooper, the lawyer for the family is walking the guy, the investigator, page by page through the investigation. And then second by second, there's 2 videos of the scene. One is a wall camera, a security camera that covers the parking lot of this mini mart. Has no sound. It's kind of black and white, a little rough, but and then there was a partial video from a bystander who pulled out his cell phone and started shooting. As the lawyer for the family walked the internal investigator through the video step by step, it's clear that the investigator says, yes, you should not. It's wrong for a trooper to pull out a gun on a traffic stop. It's wrong for the trooper to walk out in front of a running vehicle. You can't stop a vehicle, even if you shoot at it, you just get run over. So that's like policing 101. It was wrong for the trooper not to, if he was afraid that the driver was armed, he should have sought cover. He should have, not be in a place where he or others could get injured. He violated policy by shooting into a car when he was not in danger. So there are multiple violations here of basic police policy. But for some reason, the investigator just took Collins at his word. And what was really remarkable about this deposition was that, when you saw that the bullet holes, I'm paraphrasing here, when you saw the bullet holes were in the driver's door, did you ask Trooper Collins, doesn't that conflict with the car was accelerating at you? No curiosity, no question asked. No, I didn't. When you had this, did you ever ask him about violating policy by pulling this gun out and by stepping in front of a running vehicle? Oh, no. I mean, so whatever, the investigator, and my understanding is that the State Bureau investigation agents were the same, were entirely incurious. They were not at all curious about these contradictions in facts. Now, Tracy, if it's you or I, and we're being civilians and they're investigating us for a crime, and we're start making contradictions between the evidence and what we're saying or what we've said in other things, they would be, down our throats, asking why.
So clearly, when the Highway Patrol issued statements about their findings in their investigation, saying that he violated no policies, that was clearly untrue.
It was untrue.
Right? I mean, it was 100% untrue. Do we know, I guess we're going to have to generalize here, do we know who in the Highway Patrol authorized that statement to be released? I'm going to assume we're going to say whoever's in charge of the Highway Patrol.
It would have been the commander of the Highway Patrol.
Right, the top guy.
The number 2 guy is the one who signed off on these findings. He was a deputy commander, Vic Ward. He's now the police chief of Carolina Beach, I believe. It's on that same. It's in the same county. It's a couple miles away from the shooting.
So we have a cover-up that ran from the Trooper Collins all the way up through the internal investigators. With the State Bureau of Investigation, were they part of the cover-up? Or did they just turn a blind eye and just accepted whatever the Highway Patrol told them?
Well, these are separate investigations, so this SBI cannot rely on whatever the Highway Patrol found. So this was SBI made a report. Now, I have not seen their paperwork, and the SBI agents were not deposed in this lawsuit. That would have gotten a whole, mess into qualified immunity, and so they were not deposed. So I don't know the inner workings of who decided what, but their own investigation found that the truck was accelerating towards the trooper when he fired. And that's false.
Right. We know positively untrue. We know it from the investigators, the internal investigators from the Highway Patrol, because that's not what they concluded.
Correct.
They knew, they testified, they knew. And so.
And the Highway Patrol gave the results of its accident reconstruction test to the SBI. They're the ones who asked for that test originally. So they knew more than just looking at the truck, but they knew that the Highway Patrol itself found that the trooper was not being run over. And if the video is not of the greatest quality, but if you walk through it second by second and watch it a couple times, it's clear that the trooper is on the side of the vehicle.
There's no way you shoot from the front and there's bullet holes in the passenger side. I mean, the driver's side door going in. It just doesn't, it defies all logic. Okay. Trooper Collins comes from a law enforcement family with deep roots into the law enforcement in the area. Can you give us a little bit of a picture of what that means with his family?
Well, his dad's a trooper. His grandfather was a trooper. His uncle was a trooper. He has several. One, I think it was his grandfather, after retiring from the Highway Patrol, became elected sheriff in a neighboring county. His stepmother works for the local DA, and that's one of the reasons why the local DA did not want to handle this case, because he knew everyone, and one of his employees was Trooper Collins' stepmom. So, yeah, well connected in law enforcement in that part of the world.
Shocking. Someone might think there's some kind of conspiracy to cover up for this family. It's got deep roots into the police, community in there, and has a relative in the prosecutor's office. Sounds a little bit like the Ahmaud Arbery murder in, where was that, Alabama or Georgia, when the guys who murdered, murdered, they had ties to the prosecutor's office. Okay, so in North Carolina, there's not much public access to records around police and shootings and investigations into police misconduct. So how did you come about this? You got deposition transcripts. How did you get those?
Okay, so the plaintiff's attorney is a guy named Brad Bannon, and I've known him because he's handled different big cases over the years. So I know him, and he's a decent guy. And he was talking to me. We were talking about a whole different story, and we're just chatting, and he says, "Well, I got to tell you about this other case I'm trying now. It's a police shooting." And what really outraged him was that 2 hours after the shooting, there's a crime scene set up, yellow tape around the parking lot, and a defense lawyer shows up. James Payne, local defense lawyer who is on retainer for the Police Benevolent Association. He's a criminal defense attorney that is going to represent Scott Collins. He shows up at the crime scene, and the defense attorney and Collins, the suspect in the shooting, lift up the yellow tape and walk inside. Now, if you or I went to a crime scene and lifted up the yellow tape and went inside as civilians, we'd probably be arrested, for interfering with an investigation or something like that. But anyway, so they got to walk around the crime scene and start to craft their version of what happened that evening. I've talked with a couple law professors and experts on investigations and police use of force, and all were unanimous. Only a cop would this happen to. They would get access to the crime scene and walk around. So after that, I was very interested in this case, and it's all under protective order. And these are how most of these Section 1983 claims proceed, because they both sign a protective order that they won't share information that they exchanged. So when the case was settled, I went to the lawyer and said, well, now that the case is over, let's talk about it. And he says, I can't talk about it because it's under protective order. And if I talk about it, or if I share any evidence with you, a federal judge is going to be down his back. So we talked about it, and a while later, he called me back up and he said, I think I might have a workaround. And that he read the protective order carefully and said, I can't share with you any of the exhibits, any of the evidence, but the protective order does not cover the depositions that he made in the case. And these depositions are very detailed, word by word, very pressing, hard questioning of these guys, in which they describe all the evidence. So I had to rely on these depositions, which told the whole story.
What happened? So Brandon is in the car with his girlfriend.
Right.
And then they rush to his parents' house. His parents rush him and I believe the girlfriend to the hospital. How do the cops respond to his girlfriend and parents? And how do they treat them? Because I want to compare that to how they treated, responded and treated Collins and his private attorney as they're lifting the yellow tape to let them walk around the crime scene freely. What is going on with these grieving parents and his girlfriend?
Well, the girlfriend doesn't go to the hospital. She's freaked out. She's back at the house. They get his parents, Brandon's parents, get him into the car. Dad's driving. Mom's in the back seat holding on to Brandon. Brandon is just bleeding all over her. I bled all over Dad. They get to they speed up to the hospital. They get to the emergency room, and a security guard gets a wheelchair and wheels Brandon into the emergency room. And Brandon's mom told me that he took his last breath in the car just as they pulled up. And the medical records back that up, that he was basically dead when he got into the emergency room. So here, these parents, all of a sudden, they come home, their son is dying, they rush him to the hospital, they're covered, especially the mom is just drenched in his blood. And they're sitting on a bench outside the emergency room wondering what the hell happened and should they go in. And there's also we're just covered with blood. Not the highway patrol, 2 cars, several sheriff's deputies show up. They know that there's been a shooting, and they see these 2 black man and black woman covered with blood. And so they go up and start questioning them. Neither the mom or the dad wants to talk because the girlfriend told them Brandon was shot by a cop. So the mom gets up and she's going into the ER to check what's going on with her son. 2 sheriff deputies follow her into the ER, and at the desk there, they handcuff her behind her back. They walk her out the door and put her into the back of a police car. And I don't know if any of you have not been inside of a police car. The back seat has no handles. You can't open the windows. It's just a little cell. And so there's mom covered with her son's blood, handcuffed in the back of a police car. The same thing happened to the father. They had him down on the ground and cuffed him and put him in the back of a separate car. So they're just, what happened and why am I in? And the mom said she was just crying and desperate and praying for all she could pray that her son wasn't going to die. And finally, about probably 20, 30 minutes later, they let them out of the car, kept them separated. Mom went into the emergency room. They were still working on Brandon. She grabbed onto his foot And she said she's caressing his foot and she knew he was gone. So no one is detained in this case except for the grieving parents.
Makes perfect sense.
And then, so then they keep them apart until the SBI agents the SBI investigates police shootings in North Carolina. Till the SBI agents come, it was a couple hours. I think they may have driven down from Raleigh or whatever. And the parents are interrogated. And the mom says that the thing that really stuck with her from that investigation is that they were asking, what gang is Brandon in? What drugs does he use? Is he a drug dealer? And it's like, instead of that's not about trying to find out what happened. That's information that you can use to impugn the victim. And then they were both mom and dad were interviewed. And so they drive home and they find that their home has been turned into a crime scene. There's yellow tape all around the whole property. The local volunteer fire department brought its truck out and had all its lights on, was shining it up like it's almost like his bright daylight. And they were searching the car. They waited for the parents to come home before they searched the house. They searched Brandon's bedroom. They interviewed the girlfriend and anyone else. They searched the truck. And so they came home to a crime scene.
It makes all perfect sense. I mean, people say I had a judge in Chicago let off a group of cops because he said, well, they didn't have time. They didn't have a meeting and agree to conspire. So there's no way there could have been a conspiracy to cover things up. And it's a joke, right? It's like they know what to do. And this is a perfect example. The sheriff's office has no allegiance to the highway patrol. Do your job. Why are you interrogating the parents like they're suspects? What are they suspects in? Their kids, they're covered in their kids' blood. How about the human decency and respect? Oh, no. No, they all knew exactly what to do. Speaking of knowing exactly what to do, you mentioned her name earlier, the head of the State Department of Justice, Leslie, how do you pronounce her last name? Dismukes? Dismukes, okay. Leslie Dismukes, I'm quoting from your article, who was the criminal bureau chief of the State Department of Justice, who now runs the Department of Adult Corrections, by the way. She moved up in the world after this, because that's what you do when you're connected and you know exactly what to do and how to cover up for everyone. She supposedly lied to the family about an incriminating statement made by Brandon's girlfriend during her interrogation. And the family lawyer says, no, that statement was never made. I'm trying to get at why did everyone seem in this, every step of the way, from Trooper Collins' boss, to that guy's boss, to that guy's boss, to the internal investigators, to the State Bureau of Investigations, to the Attorney General, to the head of the State Department of Justice? How did they all act in concert? It's almost like they obviously didn't have a big meeting to cover it up and lie, but it just seems like that's what everyone did. Even the sheriff's police all exactly acted like they knew exactly how to do this to make sure that this trooper was going to get off for this shooting.
Yeah, and I'm not, none of these people would talk to me, despite my many and best
Shocking.
effort. And I don't have access to a lot of the files in the case because they're under court order, a protective order. But I talked to Brad Bannon, the lawyer, and he said it wasn't a conspiracy per se, because no, they didn't meet and plan it out, but everyone knew what to do. Everyone knew their role. This is a police shot a civilian, white officer shot a black guy, and they just seemed to know how to play out their roles. That it was almost like they've been trained or something to do this.
Yeah, I talked to a female officer in the Chicago Police Department many years ago now, 10, 11 years ago. And I asked her, I walked up to her. I used to work at a CrossFit gym part-time, and she was one of the clients. And I walked up to her, I go, let me ask you a question, and just give me your coldest answer, just off the cuff. If an officer was involved in a shooting and you showed up as part of it, and would you know how to cover it up right from the jump? Or would there have to be a meeting? And she goes, oh no, we all know exactly what we need to do. We would never meet because then we'd have to explain why we met. And I call it, and I want to get your feedback on this, your thoughts on it, I guess. I call it a conspiracy of like-mindedness. It's not necessarily a mutual interest of self-interest, right? We know exactly what to do. We're going to get this job. Part and parcel of this job is to cover up for everyone. And this goes from in this case, it went from the North Carolina Highway Patrol to the State Bureau of Investigations, to the Attorney General's office, to the State Department of Justice, to the whatever sheriff's office was in. No one in there stood up and said, hey, this isn't right. No one.
There's no evidence of anyone standing up. And there is no evidence standing up and saying this is wrong. And there's no evidence of any curiosity about, okay, we have conflicting facts here. We have conflicting evidence. Let's figure out what happened. They're just total lack of curiosity. No questions asked.
And you talk to quote unquote good officers. And when I talk to them, I say, the problem with corruption and brutality is your fault. The fact that the community doesn't believe you is your fault. You guys know who all the bad guys are. You do nothing to get rid of them. You do nothing but support them to the max. You're expecting communities who've been victimized by these guys to start believing you? Now, I'm sure the Black community, for the most part, in this area of North Carolina, if not all of North Carolina, if not all of America, didn't trust these agencies from the jump anyways. But how is them reading your story going to make them believe in these agencies more? If it wasn't already cratered, their belief in these agencies is going to.
Yeah. No, Brandon's mom, Wanda, told me, we had a number of talks with Brandon. The talk, what to do when you're pulled over. He had been pulled over several times in his life. And hands on the wheel, don't move, be polite. And he had been pulled over before, but I think from talking with the mom, Brandon was really scared that night when the cop pulled his gun out.
Of course.
He said from Jump Street, he had his gun out pointed at the driver. And so, and the family lawyer, the one who was there at the meeting with Dismukes when they announced they weren't going to charge Collins with anything, the family lawyer said, he knew Brandon pretty well. Brandon had a very high-pitched voice, and he said that he can hear in the cell phone tape Brandon shouting, but you won't put down your gun. But you won't put down your gun. I've listened to it, and it's kind of there, but I can't definitively say that's what he was saying. But that's what the family lawyer, knew him pretty well, said that's what was going on. And so when he finally when Brandon finally had an opportunity to just drive off, he did.
Yeah, I had an incident in a suburb where my sister lived, and I'm as white male as you're going to get. And I got pulled over, and I didn't think anything of it. I was speeding. Write me the ticket. Let's go. Move on. And all of a sudden, I wasn't paying attention to who was behind me. All of a sudden, there's 6 cops around my car. And my immediate instinct is put up my hands. I'm like, holy crapola. And the cop comes, put your hands down. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And he's like, oh, we're just doing training. Now I can only imagine what it's like to be a black male and have a white cop pull a gun on you at night for no reason. And why would you have, given everything that's happened in this country, why you think you're going to come out of that safely?
Yeah. Well,
okay,
I have to
go ahead.
tell you what the mom said. What she thinks fundamentally happened is that the trooper saw a black man with dreads driving a truck with his white girlfriend. And she thinks that's the reason for the stop. Now, I mean, she only has her life experience to base it on. She said that flat out. That's what started this.
Wow, it's certainly possible. Much worse things have happened that certainly could have existed. Right? Okay, last question. So the family settles the suit for $2.2 million. I already know the answer to this, but I have to ask you, has anything changed, or do you think will anything change as the result of the $2.2 million payout?
Well, I think one thing will change. I don't have the answer to it yet, but the Highway Patrol's insurance premiums are going to go up. I think
right.
Largely. I mean, you got to understand this. I think that the insurance company paid $2 million and the Highway Patrol paid $200,000. But don't hold me to that. But this is a decision that the insurance company lawyer said, we are not going to trial because we're going to get hammered.
Right.
So, in the cold world of, insurance lawyers, they'll raise the premium, and they avoided a much bigger loss. Now, your question obviously was about, has anything changed in the running of the Highway Patrol or running of the State Department of Justice or SBI, or how law enforcement handles police shootings? I don't see any evidence that anything's changed.
Right, and that's what I've tried to tell litigants in Chicago for the longest time, and some of the civil rights lawyers. And they've had cases that have done really good things, but most of them, 99% of them, have done nothing other than getting the family money, which they deserve, but it's not changing the culture or what's happening on the street every day. It's like they factored this in. This is a cost of doing business. The city of Chicago paid out last year $300 million in civil claims. 75 or 150 of that was for one. This has been brewing for many years. A scandal detective beat up and abused dozens, if not a couple hundred people in the confessions. And so that was a big chunk of it. But there's still over $100+ million in just what is called routine civil litigation involving police abuse and misconduct in Chicago. Nothing's changed. All they're talking about is adding more cops and getting supervision and oversight off them so they can go upon and do their jobs. Guys, the city is broke, and we just paid out over $100-some million on routine average things. Maybe we should change something, but no. And so I saw the $2.2 million, and I'm like, I'm glad the family got their money, but I just don't see it changing anything.
Well, I there's one case is a prison correctional officers who beat up a prisoner. The judge at the end of the case said, this was outrageous. This was clearly a huge civil rights violation. And this federal judge was very offended by it. And she said, and yet the taxpayer is going to pay all of the money. Why should not some of these damages be paid for from the pocket of these correctional officers? Maybe that would have a tonic effect on crimes like this.
Yeah, and they've talked about it in Chicago. The problem is the cops don't have any money, right? Go ahead, take my house. I have 25 years left on the mortgage. Go ahead. Yes, I lost that little equity, and that becomes the problem. I don't know a good answer, but until society starts doing something right, what happened to the attorney general in this case? He got made governor.
Mm-hmm.
the head of the State Bureau of Investigations or whatever she was, she moves up to run the Department of Corrections. I don't see a lot of reform happening to the Department of Corrections under her watch. I think if she probably has the ability to cover something up, she's going to. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know, but this does not paint a picture well of the leaders in North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, time will tell.
It will. All right. Thank you, Joe. We really appreciate you jumping in. Great work on this, and we really appreciate all your reporting.
Well, thanks, sir. It's good to be here.
We'd like to thank Joseph for sitting down with us. Police like to say bad shootings and cover-ups of internal investigations are a thing of the past. Obviously, not so. Why don't communities of color trust the police? This case is Exhibit A in that argument. Improper procedure, illegal shooting, untruthful statements, buried internal investigations. Seems pretty 1890s to me. Police like to talk about all the change there has been. This case demonstrates that sadly, very little meaningful change has actually occurred. Despite all the efforts of all the reformers and all the civilian review that's been put in, meaningful change really isn't easy to find. Doesn't mean there's been no progress. It just means it's a lot harder to find than we would all like. And remember, I've said this from the beginning of our podcast, actually since the beginning of the Chicago Justice Project. Urban police departments get all the headlines because there's the news that are centralized in those locations about all the misconduct and the brutality and abuse. It's sheriff's offices, it's state patrols, it's rural areas that scare the daylights out of me because there's really no one looking and no accountability. In this case, again, Exhibit A in that argument too. Thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Thanks for staying with us to the end. If you believe in this work, like this video and subscribe to help us amplify our message. And if you want to be part of the change, check out the links below to support or get involved.